Makes my butt. Sorry.
Hello. Eleanor always waits until right as it's saying going live to make some odd comment. Welcome, everyone.
Muscle tee makes my neck look really thick.
Wow, you're so muscly. Please, everyone, compliment Eleanor's muscles.
I don't do steroids, so if my neck looks big, it's just something with this camera.
This
neck widener filter?
This camera adds 10 pounds to your neck. Yeah, it's well known for doing that. Thanks for being here for a special Thursday live stream. What are we doing? No one knows. Welcome, everybody. I'm joined by the always amazing neck of Eleanor Goldfield. So, thanks for being here. We're going to get into so many important stories that are going on, and we're going to start off with the yet another attack on Columbia students. Let's get into it. We can play this tiny video from Instagram here for everyone to barely see. And yeah, let's do it. We couldn't find a smaller video. This was
if you're just joining us for the first time, Lee has an ongoing vendetta against Instagram. Not so much like the machinations of the state behind it, just like the usability.
Nope. Yep. Don't care about US Empire or Meta or Zuckerberg or anything else. Just the size of this video right there.
So, if y'all were unaware, April, I want to say like 17th or 19th was the 1-year anniversary of the Encampments, which if you haven't seen that film by our friends over at Breakthrough News, please check that out. It was the
1-year
anniversary of the Encampments at Columbia.
Not of the film.
No. Of the Encampments at Columbia and across the country, actually, at a bunch of different universities, UCLA. I mean, I can't go through the whole list, but and so when I spoke with Kay, who was one of the co-directors of the Encampments, and I asked him, like, what's the situation at universities now? He said that there's a lot of pre-shutting down of organizing. So what we saw yesterday at Columbia was basically an attempt by students. And if you check out Columbia for Palestine, they have an Instagram page. I'm sorry.
Yep.
They're basically last night at about, I want to say like 6 p.m., there was a call put out to go to campus in front of Butler, which I assume is a building. I don't know, but I'm assuming.
Or it's their Butler. I mean, Columbia students are well off, so.
So basically, the students had taken over a Butler or Butler building, unclear.
One or the other.
That and held it for several hours. And police, now, in case you don't know, the NYPD had not been allowed on the university campus since 1969.
Not including a year ago.
Right. And last year, Columbia's president basically broke that precedent and allowed NYPD to storm the campus and violently arrest a bunch of students who were occupying Hins Hall, which is the name that the students gave to what is known by the establishment as Hamilton Hall. So yesterday, some students held space in Butler, and since NYPD has already been invited onto campus after the precedent was broken last year, NYPD basically stormed, and there's video of this, with their full-on riot gear. And these are students wearing like keffiyehs and masks, like no one's wielding a sword or anything.
Yeah. Unarmed would be the term to use.
So and basically, like the students were basically they were refusing to comply with the demand by the NYPD, who shouldn't be on the campus anyway, to move, because actually, if you think about it, the students have a right to be in their own
more than the police
university buildings than NYPD does. But that kind of logic doesn't enter into this conversation. So basically, they were violently arrested by cops, and as of basically this morning, after 18 hours since public safety arrests, And 14 hours since NYPD arrests, all of the arrested have been released. This is from Colombia for Palestine's Instagram page. And so that's the latest, but you can see video of
Truth to Tweet would like us to know it's the name of the campus library. It's not a person.
a person.
Yeah.
Which seems like the perfect place to hold space for an occupation or against an occupation that burns books and bombs universities. And it seems an apt place, a library. Another thing apparently that NYPD was demanding was that people take off their masks and give them their IDs, which is also just completely, I mean, it tracks with what NYPD does, but of course this is only meant so that they can forcibly expel these students,
surveil,
or
expel,
revoke visas, or what have you,
etc. Yeah, and I remember back because I lived in New York during Occupy, and back during Occupy, they would occasionally use the, early 19th and 20th century law that for against masks in New York that was meant to like stop masquerade balls or something. Like it was it was some dumb old law that hadn't been used in like 100 years, and they were like, you can't wear masks at Occupy. So anyway,
yeah, so that's new from Colombia.
Yeah, we're back into the police assaults going on at Colombia. We didn't get away from them for very long.
Nope.
And of course, Trump has gotten Colombia to agree to all these garbage things in order to get their federal funding, which should be defined as extortion. But anyway, while we're on the topic of Israel,
also thank you, Robin, for listening to my episode on Kashmir.
Yes, we'll be getting to that topic.
We're going to get to that in a minute. And I'm also going to be doing another interview on Kashmir coming up in a couple of weeks at Project Censored. But yes, there's plenty to dig into there. Carry on.
Yeah, India bombed Pakistan, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes. But while we're on the topic of Israel, Mondo Weiss is reporting Israel will be using U.S. military contractors to, quote unquote, deliver aid as it prepares to reoccupy Gaza. Because as we all know, the U.S. very good at delivering aid. We're so wonderful to other countries. We always just deliver aid like perfectly. And we never use that in order to do other things like infiltrate, attack, invade, etc.
But also before we talk about aid, I mean, so these companies are called Safe Reach Solutions and UG Solutions. These are two U.S. security companies. SRS is run by a former CIA senior intelligence officer, Phil Riley, while UG Solutions is manned by Jameson Gavoni, a former Green Beret with tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the contractors will be armed because I don't know about you, but when you deliver aid, you should definitely be packing heat because you never know what a hungry person just desperately looking for food. You don't know if you just might have to shoot a bunch of folks. So
children trying to get water are often the most dangerous to be around. Yeah.
But here's the kicker. This aid, 60 trucks would come into Gaza per day. That's enough to feed roughly 5,000 to 6,000 households. With, I'm assuming like a household, they mean like 4 people. There are roughly 1.8 million people in Gaza who are starving. So 60 trucks, that's also 1/10 of the volume that Israel allowed in during the quote unquote ceasefire. 1/10. So the idea that 60 trucks a day is somehow aid is dumb. It's like a level of dumb shittery that even duct tape can't fix. It's like, it's so remarkably offensive to call that aid. It's not aid. Because you're basically saying, I'm going to give a measly amount of food to a few people and let the rest of them starve to death. That's not aid.
Maybe it'll be as good as the aid pier we put up
exactly
going to Gaza. That pier did a lot, I feel like. So
Yeah, that's now basically like a glorified like aquarium castle for a bunch of fish in the Mediterranean, I guess.
Yeah, they took it apart, and I'm assuming sank it. I don't know.
So yeah, it's just as one head of an international aid nonprofit said, 60 trucks is just a tactic by Israel to ease international pressure. It's not a real effort to address the humanitarian crisis. Of course, because Israel has admitted that they are using starvation as a tactic. So then why would they legitimately want to change that tactic? They just want to point to the aid trucks coming in. They're going to take video of it, I guarantee, and be like, hey, look, we're letting aid in. So
Well, and it was probably it's probably because probably the only reason they're letting anything in is Trump probably said to them like, "Oh, I'll agree to your ethnic cleansing of Gaza, but I want to make it look good for me. I want it to look like I'm doing this great thing. So let's let a few aid trucks in, not nearly enough to help everyone, and then I can say, "Oh, I got the deal done that allowed for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza."
well, and also Trump said that basically Netanyahu can do whatever he wants, and he also claimed that Hamas was the ones that were starving Palestinians.
Yeah, well, that's their ongoing messaging tactic. Is anything you say about what Israel's doing? Hey, Israel's committing war crimes. Israel's shooting children. They just like the press secretary will just go, "Let's remember this is Hamas's fault." It's like, no, that's not how the world works. You can't just do whatever you want, no matter what happened October 7th or any other day.
Meanwhile, there's a different Mondo Weiss report that shows that armed looters who have been confiscating food and supplies in the area are either receiving Israeli support or Israel is very aware that they're doing it. It's another, like, if you've been following any of what Israel does, there is a long list of sadistic tactics. So it's not just it's not just starvation and bombing. Like there's a long list of these, I don't want to call them smaller, but more like more targeted sadistic tactics, like armed looters that are either on the payroll of Israel or Israel's well aware of them because they're well aware of everything that happens in Gaza. So they're well aware of this happening. And this is part of what they're doing. They're trying to ensure that the little aid that is available is, attacked by armed looters and things like that. So it's like there is literally no level that is not targeted in a remarkably sadistic, violent way by Israel. So the yeah, that basically Ishmael Thawabata, the head of the government media office in Gaza, told Mondo Weiss that these acts, that's the looting, the armed looting, are not spontaneous. They are not the result of hunger or necessity, as is being said, but are backed by malicious intentions aiming to sow chaos and damage the social fabric. So again, this is one of those tactics. So yeah, I lack the appropriate amount of language to comment on that.
And in case anyone still believed that Israel was trying to get the hostages, that's their big, and of course they only mean Israeli hostages, not Palestinians, the thousands they have in the prisons. But Israel likes to throw forward that propaganda since October 7th. Oh, we're just trying to get the hostages. That's our main goal. And they continue to tell a lot of the Israeli populace that actually does care about the Israeli hostages that that's their main goal. Well, just the other day, they even stopped putting it at the top of their list of Gaza war goals.
By the way, this is Haaretz.
This is Haaretz. Yeah, it's an Israeli newspaper. Yeah. The Israeli army places returning hostages at the bottom of its Gaza war goals. This is after having it in the first or second spot, apparently, of their Gaza war goals since October 7th. So like a year and a half, they've kept putting get the hostages at the top. And now it's down at the bottom of the list behind things like defeat Hamas and demilitarize Gaza. Basically things that they know can never be done unless you literally clear everyone out of Gaza, which seems to be where they're headed.
Right. That's what they want to do.
It's just a bullshit, idea that like, oh, we're going to defeat Hamas. And then because every time they kill someone connected to Hamas, they create 10 more because you've murdered their family members.
Well, and also another point here is that they're claiming now that they're going to remove everybody in Gaza to the south. I'm not sure what they mean by the south, but because that's Egypt. But anyway, they're going to remove everybody to the south, and then they'll go after Hamas. And it's like a couple of things here. First of all, that yes, that's just ethnic cleansing and like basically what the United States government did to the indigenous peoples here, and what, it's settler colonialism in its most violent format. The other thing is, when I spoke to a Palestinian American Air Force veteran who had left the Air Force after October 7th because of what the United States was perpetuating. And he said, he was like, the US is well aware of what Israel is doing. So this kind of BS that, oh, we didn't know that yeah. But one of the things that he said was, if you really wanted to go after Hamas, there are ways of removing the civilian population and then going and, fighting in the streets or doing whatever it is that you claim that you want to be doing. And he said that would be very easy for Israel to do, because that's what Israel does all the time, is forcibly move people around. So the idea that Israel couldn't remove the civilian population from outside of the concentration camp known as Gaza and then go in and go after the evil terrorists, it's like, it's all bullshit. Because of course they could do that, but the goal is to kill children. The goal is to kill innocent all of them are innocent, but it's like the goal is to kill the civilian population, because every single Palestinian, whether they be in Palestine or in the diaspora, is a threat to Israel's existence. And so the goal is to exterminate them. So this idea that, oh, we're going to move them to the south so that we can go after Hamas, it's like it's bullshit on the face of it. But also, then why didn't you do that to begin with? If that was the whole point, right? So again, not that we should ever trust Israel in any of the things that they say, but it's like, this is just one of those promises where, just like the slightly little scratching of the surface, you're like, this is all horseshit.
And it also explains, their goal being to ethnically cleanse the whole place, also explains why they did several things going back, months and months ago, when people were like, what kind of military use is there in bulldozing cemeteries, in blowing up every school you see, in blowing up every landmark, libraries? The reason was because they were trying to cut the people's tie to the land. If you get rid of everything that had meaning to them, schools, libraries, cemeteries, houses, then they're far more likely going to be willing to be ethnically cleansed and forcibly leave the area if every tie to the area has been severed, which is also all a war crime. Everything I've just listed is a war crime, and it's why there's an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu. Thank you, Zafar, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. They say, don't you think that Israeli peace activists is just a psyop to convince the world that Israel is full of moderate, peace-loving individuals? Well, there aren't many Israeli peace activists. They're like something like 80 or 90% of Israel wants to finish the mission in Gaza. They just want the hostages back first, is the only thing they're protesting, it seems.
Well, and also having spoken to people who have been there, and I've never been, so I can't speak to it from that perspective. But for instance, when I spoke with Matthew Ho, who had recently gone and spoken with quote unquote Israeli peace activists, he said that what they were saying is that they wanted the fighting to stop, as if it was like, two people in a boxing ring. But they would not at all go so far as to say it's Israel's fault, or that Israel is committing genocide. And they certainly would never go so far as to say that Israel shouldn't exist. So even when we talk about like Israeli peace activists and things like that, it's important to contextualize them in like the larger conversation, like the larger spectrum of like, okay, but they're kind of like they're kind of like a Bernie Sanders, right? Who's like, I don't necessarily think you should bomb children, but also like Israel should 100% exist. Like that's not even on the table. So it's like yes, I think there might be some efforts to make it look like Israel is filled with, moderate, like centrists. But I also think that
Yeah.
most people are aware who have even done, again, like even just a modicum of scratching the surface, that any kind of quote unquote peace activist in Israel would never go so far as to say that Israel should not be a thing, should not be a settler colonialist ethno state.
Okay, we've got a lot more for you coming up right now, but I want to spend 1 minute to give a shout out to our sponsor for this show. Let's see here. Sorry, got to get the screens all worked out, which takes me a second. I should have prepared this better. What the hell?
It's spinning.
Yeah, I got a spinning situation. Okay, sponsor for the show is Chapter, a free, I repeat, free Medicare navigation and advice service. So if you're 65 or older, or your parents are, check out Chapter. It can really help you understand the 24,000, yes, 24,000 plans offered with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medigap. And, I'm of the opinion that these things many of them are intentionally confusing so that people end up getting the wrong thing, which is where Chapter can come in and help you. And the numbers of people happy with Chapter when they use it is kind of crazy. 96% of people who use Chapter return to use it the second year, which is an amazing number. Seniors have historically saved over $1,000 a year. Chapter has near perfect reviews online, which is also kind of unheard of, and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau, and it's free. So check out Chapter, see if it's right for you or your parents. You can either go to askchapter.org/camp, my last name, or call 757-349-8232. And you can tell them you heard about it from this show so that we get credit. All this info will also be in the description of this episode. Did I mention it's free? Okay. Let's keep going. Let's get to India bombing Pakistan, because that seems like an important development.
Yes. Can I just offer some backstory here? So India. So on April 22nd, and I think we mentioned this in a previous show. On April 22nd, there was an attack on tourists in Indian-occupied Kashmir, during which 26 people were killed. India has blamed Pakistan-based groups for the attack. However, Pakistan has denied its involvement in the attack and asked for a neutral investigation into the incident. And so,
like the OPCW and their neutral investigation into Syria.
Lee's reading a book about this, so it's very much like on his mind. If anyone was just like, "Wow, that was a non sequitur." Okay, so
there was a non sequitur.
It was, I mean, a little bit.
I think it was full on sequitur. Okay,
sequitur plus. So basically, what happened was that the Indian military launched multiple missile attacks on sites in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir early on Wednesday. In an attack it called Operation Sindoor, India claims to have struck 9 sites. And according to Pakistan, 31 people were killed, including a 3-year-old child, a 16-year-old girl, and an 18-year-old boy. So again, obviously not attacking like military, bases or whatever, because there wouldn't be a 3-year-old child there. But I think what's important to note about this is that the kind of copycat playbook we see here between the Modi government and Israel, and I think I've talked about this before as well. That after the April 22nd attack, where 26 people were killed, a lot of people in India's government and Hindu nationalists, who, by the way, Kashmir is majority Muslim, so there's a lot of like hatred towards Muslims. There's a lot of Islamophobia. A lot of people in India were calling for India to Gaza Kashmir, to basically take the playbook of Netanyahu's government, or Israel, and apply that to Kashmir, which, by the way, is the most militarized place on the planet. And somebody mentioned that they're listening to my piece from November about Kashmir. That kind of gives you like a great rundown of the situation in Kashmir before this happened. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. That would be nice. But basically, it's kind of the same. It's a similar brand of settler colonialism that's happening in Kashmir by India. And now we see India attacking Pakistan because it claims that it was Pakistan's fault. So yeah, it's and News Corps did a great job of highlighting the media's utter failure in appropriately covering this. So they point out the media parrots India's justification, just like they do for Israel. So, for instance, the Financial Times ran a piece that says India launches strike on terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan.
Yeah.
What?
Seems
Like,
a
you just
a little one-sided.
right? You literally just took, and it said, like, it has quotes around it, so it's like you just took India's explanation and ran that as your headline. That's not journalism, my friend. That is the stenographers for the war machine. And so that's like the Daily Mail says India attacks Pakistan, 9 terrorist camps hit. Well, what the hell is a terrorist? I guess it's just whatever you hit. It's kind of like the US. Well, we hit our targets. What are your targets? Militants. How do you define if they're militants? If we hit them.
We hit them.
Okay.
The militants. And let's also remember that right now is a very important time for U.S. propaganda to align with India. The U.S. empire views India as pivotal in trying to salvage the hegemony as the de-dollarization is increasing around the globe. And so this alliance with Modi is very strong right now between Trump and Modi and the U.S. empire and Modi. And we should also remember that the U.S. helped create a lawfare coup in Pakistan not long ago, got Imran Khan locked up, and leaked documents show the involvement of the U.S. empire stopping Imran Khan. Imran Khan was not even that left wing, but the thing that he was doing that was infuriating the U.S. was somewhat aligning with Russia in the proxy war and continuing to do economic deals with Russia. So the U.S. Basically took him out. He was also shot, but I don't know if it's as clear that the U.S. was involved in that.
Also, so for instance, they also show a Washington Post article that says India strikes Pakistan after Kashmir attack, framing it as retaliation, despite the fact that there's no evidence linking Pakistan to this attack. But the way the Washington Post frames it is, it's the next slide. The way the Washington Post frames it is just like, oh, I just take it for granted that it's because, like, that's why they're doing it. It's retaliation. So that makes it okay, right? And this is like really, I know I bring this up every time I talk about this shit, but like critical media literacy is so damn important, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And there are great tools for that on projectcensor.org, because that's like one of the main things that we do. But it's like, it's so important to recognize how they're lying to you. Okay, so where in this article do they show proof? Do they give you proof that it's Pakistan? They don't, because they don't have any. So it's like, this is one of those things where you have to start questioning just the headline, because you don't even, it's so hard to recognize, because the fish doesn't recognize that they're in water, right? It takes this shit happens to me. So I'm not saying that like, hey, I got it, I'm perfect. Like, I still find myself reading headlines and being like, oh, that's interesting. That no, it's fucking hard, man, because like we're programmed to read these things and be like, oh my God, Pakistan must be behind this attack on April 22nd. And yet you walk away. And if somebody were to ask you, so what proof do you have? You're like, because they didn't give you any, because there isn't any. So this kind of just like parroting the official story, which is really like what the Washington Post and the New York Times do best. It is like really, really important to question that. And so And the News Corp also shows like Pakistani newspapers that focus on the death toll from India's attacks and how Pakistan has now vowed to respond. And here we see how these things escalate into regional, if not world war. Well, I'm gonna retaliate for some shit that I just think that you did. And then the person who's retaliated against is like, well, you just hit me out of fucking nowhere. So now I'm gonna retaliate. And then we just keep going until we're in a world war. So yeah, I think it's important to question all of this, and to try to find outlets like News Corp who outlines these kind of things. There's another good page called Stand with Kashmir, that does this from the lens of Kashmir, of occupied Kashmir, of course. But it's important to look at this through several lenses, not just the Washington Post, if you ever look at the Washington Post, which I don't necessarily recommend.
Well, sometimes people, like, you've eaten something bad and you want to get it up. So
I-
there are times
The New
that
York
it's
Times,
necessary.
these newspapers should only be used for like proof of life videos. That's, it's the only time.
Okay, let's go on to Steven Semler's analysis of Donald Trump's budget. Donald Trump has, and the Republicans, now this doesn't mean there aren't Democrats who will side with this garbage, but they have put forward a wonderful new budget for the federal government. And what do you think the number one area they want to spend money on is? Food stamps.
I was going to say bird feeders.
How about free water parks for the children?
I don't like water parks.
No, but children do.
Reek of chlorine.
Okay.
I didn't like them as a child either.
Thank you, Teresa, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Teresa. So this actually came out on Friday, last Friday. This is it's not a full proposal. It's what they call in the biz a skinny budget. But it basically gives you an idea of the priorities, which, I mean, you're not going to be surprised at all. I'd also just like to give a shout out to Stephen for also just doing this amazing work. But also, I appreciate that he points out that his mood is irritable. I get it. Relatable.
On the top line analysis, he has at the bottom, my mood irritable, which this is also the spot that is held by Israeli hostages on Israel's list of Gaza war aims.
Yeah. Okay, so again, not going to be surprised. Over 75% of Trump's budget is earmarked for the military and the police.
For those of you watching this and not listening to the podcast, the part that is red or dark red or any kind of red is military and police and intelligence, etc.
And everything else is the gray. Like everything. Not just like education or health, like all of the things are other.
Folks not listening to not viewing the live stream, 75% of this pie-shaped chart is red or dark red. This is what fascism looks like. This is also what a country with spiraling inequality looks like. Is you want to just put in more quote unquote law enforcement. You put more cops out. You put more military out. You put more NSA out. More surveillance. This is what happens when inequality spirals out of control. And they want to try and hold on to this status quo, which is a class war.
So military spending as a share of the total, just military, is 60%. So that's cool. And non-military spending is 40%. And that's all of the things. I really can't stress this enough. Like, it's not like, 60% goes to military and 40% goes to education. It's like, no, all of the fucking things, everything from healthcare to education to infrastructure, to like climate change, like all of the things. Yeah, I'm just going to say my mood irritable.
Total discretionary funding is requested is $1.69 trillion.
Which I don't know what that means.
Unbelievable amounts of money. And the military, for the first time ever, if they were to get this, if this were to happen, $1.01 trillion. Over $1 trillion just for the military. Doesn't count black budgets, doesn't count so many other things, doesn't count policing. This is just military, over $1 trillion. And the reason that the United States can spend anywhere near this on military and policing is thanks to our petrodollar system, which is steadily collapsing. And tonight's Unredacted Tonight will be on the petrodollar. Do you want me to highlight that comment? This one?
Yeah. Irritable.
And Eleanor is done with her analysis. Since I mentioned it, I'll go ahead and promote tonight's Unredacted Tonight real quick. I hope you will check it out. It airs at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And here is... There it is over. It's a youtube.com/ I don't know, actually. I changed it. I think it's at Unredacted Tonight, I think. But anyway, you can go to leecamp.com/unredacted and get it there. I got too much to remember. It's just too much.
Dude.
It's too much going on. Look, leecamp.com/unredacted. Just do that. That'll take you there. Okay. But anyway, it airs, premieres tonight, and you can watch it anytime afterwards if you missed it. So hope you check it out. What would you like to cover next?
I don't know. You've got the mouse.
I do have a mouse. Well, this is one you don't know about, so it'll be a surprise for you. The U.S. is pushing for more extortion. Most of what Trump's been doing to other countries is like the dictionary definition of extortion. It's basically, we will put giant tariffs on you unless. And one of the things it has now come out there pushing is nations facing giant tariffs have to approve Musk's Starlink. So this is just pure corruption, where you are forcing countries around the world to use the product of one of your top people in your administration. It's pure corruption, pure enriching yourself with the presidency, and pure extortion. But we are now at a time where none of that, no one's like, I think that's illegal. Like, no one cares. It's a full-on kleptocracy is what it is. And anyway, so they're trying Starlink, for those who don't know, is one of Elon Musk's businesses. It allows people to basically use satellite phones wherever they are.
Except Gaza, by the way.
Yeah, can't use it in Gaza. But it basically puts thousands of tiny satellites into orbit. I was going to cover, and then I never got around to it, how the vast amount of pollution this is creating, because these little satellites are only meant to stay up there for like a year or two, and then they rain down. And the plan of Starlink is that they burn up in the atmosphere. But where do all the like fumes and little particles that are so-called burned up, where do they go? Well, people don't really know. It's just massive pollution. And Elon Musk gets away with it. So, but yeah, new level of extortion out of the U.S. government. You have to use Starlink, or it will put higher tariffs on you. All right, let's get to continued assault by ICE.
I just want to point out that I bring the feel-good stories to this podcast.
That is not true.
I feel like I don't get enough credit.
That's so not true.
For doing that.
Absolutely not true.
Okay. Wow, I'm so tiny. Can you hear me now?
This is not coming out for some reason. I think they do not want you to see this article.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
well,
anyway,
just talk
it's on
about
Truth
it, and I'll
Out.
work on it. I'll work on it.
It's on Truth Out, which is a great outlet. So, as y'all know, the Gestapo, or ICE and CBP, are continuing to...
Thank you, James. Much love.
Thanks, James. are continuing to disappear people and harass and just generally be the Gestapo. So right now, there are nearly 50,000 people in ICE detention, reaching numbers that are comparable to Trump's first term. And recently, 3 more people have died in ICE custody just in April. And at least 7 people have died while incarcerated by ICE since Trump's second term began. And so these are obviously like totally preventable deaths. Is the internet cutting out?
No,
Oh,
keep
okay.
going.
So and we've covered this before, where people are being held in like pretrial facilities and things like that, where you're not supposed to keep people long term. I'd argue you shouldn't keep people there at all, but that's an abolitionist discussion that I think we should have, but maybe not right now. And these places are not meant to house human beings or any living thing for that matter. And so facilities are overcrowding. They're running out of beds. And so while people are trying to like sign these fresh contracts with these private prison companies to expand to incarcerate up to 84,000 more people, reports of these remarkably inhumane conditions are piling up. And these horror stories are like, they leak out from these facilities. And, it sounds a lot like, Israeli jails and prisons. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the deadly exchange and settler colonialist fascist state sharing ideas. Maybe not.
Yeah, and many U.S. police are trained by Israel.
That's the deadly exchange. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. So the number of incarcerated adults has increased 21% since mid-December, according to ICE data, and there's just nowhere to put them, and overcrowding is obviously an issue. Some people are being housed in like tent cities, and I mean that makes it sound kind of like nicer, but they're basically like, they just set up these like crappy tents around people in these horrific concentration camps. And there's, it's dangerous overcrowding. And because they have nowhere to put them, because the Gestapo keep throwing people in detention. They keep kidnapping them and disappearing them, but there's not enough. I mean, even in the largest prison state in the world, there's not enough room for all of the people who are being
That's why they
disappeared.
need more money. That's why Trump's trying to give them more
Yeah.
money, so they can have a better cells and for the prisoners, I'm sure. Like probably higher thread count on the sheets, like a lot that they could do.
Or just sheets.
Why don't you want more money to help these prisoners, Eleanor?
ICE claims that there's going to be air conditioning in these tent cities, which to me, it's like, at that point, aren't you just saying like, yes, we're going to have tent cities and concentration camps, but there's going to be AC? And then why would you believe that when, I mean, it like ICE's response to the death of these 7 people totally unnecessarily is, well, we give people comprehensive medical care. That's legit what they claimed, is that they give people comprehensive medical care when they come into the facilities. Obviously not.
Obviously not good enough.
Obviously not,
Yeah.
because people are dying from issues that like their families say like they didn't have a problem when they left, or they had like, if they would have just been given their medication, they'd be fine. This is another obvious issue. When people are arrested, they're not given access to necessary medications, everything from like diabetic medication to heart medication, shit that would, like, if you took it, you'd be fine, like you wouldn't die. And then of course they confiscate that as like contraband or whatever, and then people die. There's reports of an extreme overuse of solitary confinement, which is torture. That's been well documented. And the US is like one of only like 2 places on the planet that uses solitary confinement.
Yeah, it's totally torture.
The denial of access to medical care, poor hygiene and sanitation, frequent use of physical force and chemical gases. So they're gassing people. When I say the Gestapo, like, I'm not trying to just be cute or hyperbolic. Like, there's a reason that Nazi Germany learned so much from the United States, because the United States is the OG vis-a-vis Europe, of course. And if folks have not read Sven Lindqvist's Exterminate All the Brutes, I'd absolutely recommend it, because it's a
She
book.
means Sven Lindqvist.
Okay, you don't. Oh God, that hurts my bone marrow.
If
when
you're
you say
trying
that.
to look it up,
you could just look up the name of the book, okay? If you're going to be so American about it. Oh God. Okay. Anyway, I need to like recover from that. Anyway, it's an amazing book that really outlines how, like, we like to talk about Hitler, he came up with these horrific ideas out of nowhere, as opposed to somebody who grew up during the European colonization of Africa, who would have read all about this, would have read about all of the horrific things that Europeans were doing to
and
Africans
slavery in the United States,
and bragging about it. Well, I'm just talking about Europe right now, but like they would, they got medals. Churchill talked about slaughtering entire tribes as sport, right? So it's like you cannot talk about Hitler as existing in a vacuum. So, and of course, that's just Europe. He also, of course, like as you mentioned, got a lot of ideas from the United States, how the United States dealt with the indigenous peoples, and of course, how the United States still to this day deals with the descendants of slaves that were stolen from Africa. So yeah, frequent use of physical force and chemical gases, and reports of sexual abuse. So again, we're seeing connections between like reports of what's happening in these concentration camps and what happens in Israeli concentration camps. These are very similar tactics. These are shared tactics. And people are going to continue to die in these detention centers sounds so sanitized. Prisons, concentration. People will continue to die in these horrific, totally avoidable ways. And I just want to give a quick shout out. Once again, folks in DC have stood up. There were plainclothes ICE officers who showed up to a restaurant in DC and said that they were doing some kind of they were like checking something for some kind of like food administration. So total bullshit, because again, law enforcement is allowed to lie to you. So they tried to like get to the back, and then the people at the front were like, well, we need a warrant if you're going to go back there. They didn't have one. They said they didn't need one. Yes, they do. Never open the door when ICE knocks, because they need to show you a signed warrant. And I like looking here.
If you want to stare at them.
But that feels weird. Okay. I'm staring into the abyss, and then the abyss stares back, and then it gets weird, and I start crying. Okay. So, so basically they didn't let them go back to the kitchen to try and disappear folks. So always remember that you can and should stand up for people in your workplace, in your community. If you see some like people wearing plain clothes, but they got like the barbed wire tattoo or some shit, just like, hey, I'm here to see your neighbor Teddy. Be like, no, you're not. Yeah. And if you don't have a warrant, you don't get to see Teddy. So that's just, we have an obligation to stand between these targets of U.S. empire and the Gestapo. So thank you, Kat. Love you.
I don't know that I have a lot of analysis of this, but people are asking us to comment on the new Pope, so I'll go ahead and mention
dude's American.
That the dude is American, and he goes by dude.
Also, Robert Prevost does not sound like a Pope's name. Can I just say, I'm not trying to be an asshole.
Now he's not. Now he's Pope Leo.
Who names him? Is there a naming ceremony?
Pope
Leo?
They put a bunch of rap names in a bucket, and they pick.
Pope Leo, I feel like that's like I don't know, some Leonardo DiCaprio like
He was almost
fan fiction or
he was
something.
almost Pope the Stallion. That was going to be the second option. I don't have a lot of analysis of this. I mean, other than religion is silly, so there's that analysis. But
apparently he was a part of the former popes.
The former pope. Oh my God, are they like gremlins? Like he dies and one pops off and grows into a new pope?
That's actually how popes work.
Oh my
I don't
God,
know if you knew that.
That's horrifying.
But he was apparently part of the last pope's, like some of his more progressive reforms. I saw a post that said that. I can't corroborate that because I haven't done any research into it, but apparently he's like, as popes go, apparently like he is more in line with the last pope.
Also proudly gay.
I don't think that's true.
Oh no, sorry, I was reading something else. That is not true.
He's probably unproudly gay.
I guess my analysis of the new pope would be I can't help but make fun of popes. That would be I mean, it's this weird thing where it's like, I don't believe their stuff they're doing. So how much can I be like, oh my God, there's a new pope? Like, unless you're really Catholic, like why? Like, oh, there's a new thing there. I don't know. I mean, I guess I have this trouble with a lot of things like nation states as well, but
yeah, I mean, but weren't you the one, because we were having this conversation and I was like, I don't give a shit who they choose. And you were like, yeah. And also, like, if it's a pope that's progressive, it can help like bring people, like the pope can be a conduit to bring people to be less shitty.
To be less shitty, yeah. No, there's that.
Because if you think that this dude is like the direct connect to God, like he's your God operator, then like if he's less shitty than all of the other ones to ever have existed, then it can bring people to think about things like climate change and genocide.
Yes. I'm for anyone that helps other people think correctly. That is a good thing. Pope Francis actually.
Oh my God.
Potpourri.
I'm a big fan of this pun.
Ratso says potpourri.
I love that. Thank you.
I believe it's potpourri, right? But I was going to say, Pope Francis had said a few things, not nearly enough, but a few things about Gaza. And
apparently he gave them his Pope Mobile too.
Weirdly gave them the Pope Mobile to be turned into a portable clinic or something. And you kind of look at a photo of it and it's like, how much of a clinic could you fit in that thing with?
I'm also like, dude, you owned like the Catholic
the
Church,
richest,
and all you could do was give him a shitty
but he
car
doesn't
without
get
a roof?
to, but he doesn't get to give that away with his death. He can't. That'd be amazing though if he dies and he's like, I give the Vatican to Carl in Cincinnati, and Carl's like, oh my God. Yeah, that'd be great.
No, I know, but like I feel like he, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what you're. Also, can you get the Pope Mobile inside Gaza now? Anyway, it's like
they got to smuggle it through the tunnels, which is not easy.
I feel like we derailed a little bit here, but
all right.
But potpourri is my new favorite pun, so thank you for that.
Last topic here is that the U.S. Well, I guess the Trump administration has instructed our intelligence services to start spying on Greenland more, and Denmark is not happy with this. Can
you call it spying when you announce it? Then it's not spying; it's just watching.
No, you could.
If I announce it, it's not spying.
If you announce where the spies are, that's not spying.
They're in Greenland, obviously.
Not necessarily. They could point a
oh my God!
Listening
device.
I
don't think that's.
You think they're in Greenland?
I think we're no longer.
I think they use satellites and shit.
I don't think you can call it spying when you call it out like that. Then it's just watching.
Yeah, but we know the CIA spies. That doesn't mean we know where they are.
No, I know, but that's the point. You can't, we don't know where they are.
We don't know where the Greenland ones are either.
They're in Greenland, obviously.
Not necessarily.
Oh my God. They're not going to be in Oklahoma. That's not going to help them.
Collection emphasis. That does not mean they stand around. Do you think they're standing on the street corners in Greenland?
Collection of what?
With a big fake mustache going, hello, I am greenish.
Yes, actually I do.
Denmark claims it is summoning the U.S. ambassador to Copenhagen because the U.S. intelligence agencies have been ordered to increase espionage in Greenland. The Danish foreign minister, would you like to pronounce that?
Lars Løkke Rasmussen.
That said on Wednesday that no, she didn't just sneeze, was concerned about the report in the Wall Street Journal telling something news agency, it worries me a lot because we don't spy between friends. Oh
Actually,
my God. That is bullshit.
I also think it's funny for the Danes to say that because it's like the Danes also spy. Like they're Danish. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, of course they're spying on friends. Like even back under Obama, we were spying on, it came out, we were spying on like our allies at UN meetings. I mean, don't spy amongst friends.
That's
Bull.
all you do. Yeah. Yeah, this is like, and they're doing it just, I'm confused. Like, why?
Because he
Just
wants
for
to
shits and
steal.
giggles?
No, he wants to steal Greenland.
What does spying help you do?
Probably find either ways to get them. I don't know, to unravel their ability to claim their independence, or things to claim they're doing illegally. That now it would all be bullshit. But
Also, I don't know.
also, they put up a wall of dead porpoises to stop the U.S. from getting in. So spying might help us know how to get around that.
I don't know if we've said this on the show, but there is legit, and I wish I was kidding. There is actually a bill in the United States Congress.
Oh, I think I talked about this once.
Called Red, White, and Blue Land. They want to rename Greenland Red, White, and Blue Land.
And steal it.
I was kidding. No, obviously. Yeah. There's
a bill to steal Greenland and
name it
Red,
White, and Blue Land.
Yes. Here it is.
So, I mean, this is dumb, like on so many levels, but I also think it's funny because
the U.S. is now like a cartoon of a country. Like a sad
Greenland
cartoon.
was named that like as a joke by the Vikings because they wanted to get more settlers to move there. And that's why Iceland is named Iceland, because it wasn't. And actually, the Vikings deforested Iceland. That's a separate story about like how the Vikings weren't so cool. But yeah, they named it Greenland as a joke. So like, it's just like compounding it's like so many levels of dumb shittery. And I just...
Yeah, we're ruled by idiopaths, right? Idiot sociopaths.
I
and
like
they're just yeah, thank you.
I like that.
And they're dummies. That's the thing. They're not, they're sociopaths and psychopaths, but they're also dumb. They're all of those things. You can be all of those things. It's not mutually exclusive.
Also, I would just like to say another thing about Greenland. Greenland should not belong to Denmark. So like, I know that we're talking about this and we're trying to like, and people are like, oh, the Danes should not. The only people who should have sovereignty over Greenland are the indigenous people of Greenland. And Denmark is not this benevolent ruler. Like there have been a lot of...
Kurt has a good point. Red, white, and blue is also Russian. And France.
Yeah, and France. It's a lot. Like a lot of people chose those colors. And actually, I think the US chose those colors because France chose those colors, because France has the tricolor, which is liberty, equality, and egalitarianism and fraternity or brotherhood.
The British flag is also red, white, and blue, right?
Yeah, a lot of them chose those three colors, dude. Like it's really like it. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, Norway's flag is also red, white, and blue. Like a lot of problematic. Anyway, so Denmark is not this like incredibly benevolent overlord, because really benevolent colonialist governments are oxymorons. And recently, it was like late last year, this kind of, it might have even bubbled up to American media, but it certainly bubbled up in Danish and like Scandinavian media, the issue of the Danish government stealing children, basically like children are born to the indigenous peoples of Greenland, and then the Danish government basically removes them from their families. So I think like
Probably learned it from the U.S.
There are levels to this conversation. One is the U.S. is just fucking dumb and like should just stop. The second layer is that no European or American nation should own Greenland at all. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm
Also,
like, I don't want to come across as being like, woohoo, Denmark.
Also, to dig down another layer, nation states are fucking stupid.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, folks. That's the show. Thanks for joining us. This is also a podcast called Common Censored. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Give it a rating. That helps us. Check out Eleanor's other podcast called Project Censored that she co-hosts. Amazing stuff over there. There's a new episode of Unredacted Tonight premiering tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Unredacted tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I got to be honest, one of the most important shows I've ever done because it digs down into everything that the petrodollar is and reveals, etc.
Oh, shit.
So check out that episode. Might be a fun little appearance of John from John F. O'Donnell as well. So much going on. And
can you please, if y'all think that John should be on the show, can you please let Lee know? Because I personally love it.
It's not. Oh my God. You're making it sound like I just don't like John. It has nothing to do with. Stop. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a million other things. All right. And also, I will probably be back with another live stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Love and solidarity. Keep fighting, everybody.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
Same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha.